Edge designations, CFA Level 1, pre-reading economics, learning module 2. This is the second module for the economics pre-read out of a total of 7. Learning module 2, introduction to the firm and market organization. And what you notice about this particular learning module is pretty much a continuation of what we saw already in learning module number 1. We continue onwards. As per usual, we give you the learning outcome statements on the front page, just for you to have a look at those and make sure, as we normally do, to come back to these at the end of the particular learning module and make sure you have understood and gained each one of those learning outcome statements. Let's get going straight away. Okay, and now we're moving to, remember what we spoke about in learning module number 1. Okay, supply, demand, elasticities, all that kind of good stuff. That's all coming back to us now again in learning module 2. Okay, we build on that knowledge that we have already gained from learning module 1. We start off over here. The learning outcome statement says describe characteristics of perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and pure monopoly. Okay, and got a lovely little chart for you over here on the very first page, okay, or second page. Okay, and let's have a look over here. So we start off with perfect competition, number of firms, many firms, what type of product, generally in a homogeneous, standardized product. In other words, a product that's available to everybody, easy to come in, lots of information. You can't really collude because there are so many competitors. Okay, and remember, going back to learning module number 1, what would our demand curve look like? It's horizontal. Horizontal meaning perfectly elastic. You can do whatever you like, but remember, if you move away from the price, okay, if you move away from the price that the market's charging, what's going to happen to the demand for your product? It's going to go away completely. Why? Because we are in a state of what we call perfect competition, and everybody's then going to go to your competitors because their prices are lower than yours. Okay, and that's why the demand curve is horizontal, and hopefully the words make sense coming out of learning module 1, perfectly elastic. Long run economic profit, okay, you can only make normal profits. Okay, we move across to, and have a look over here. There's a little, of course, there's a difference between monopolistic competition and a monopoly. Let's just try and contrast those two. Number of firms, there's a few firms. Okay, yeah, and a complete monopoly, there's only one firm. Nature of the product, it's a hetero different, it's differentiated. Monopoly, only one product. Okay, no close substitutes at all. Entry is free, you can come in. A complete monopoly, you can't get in, it's completely blocked. Incomplete information, you can't really collude in monopolistic competition. Okay, there is no competition over there in a monopoly, and yes, of course, you can do whatever you like, but who would you be colluding with because you are the only party? Okay, in a monopolistic competition, you've got a downward sloping demand curve. In other words, there is demand for your product, and remember what we spoke about previously, there is an inverse relationship between what? Between the price of the good and the quantity demanded. That's the demand curve. It's downward sloping. There's an inverse relationship. Okay, it equals the market demand curve, also downward sloping. In a monopoly, you can have long-term profits, normal profits only over there. Let's have a look then at our oligopoly. Okay, Oli, there's only a few competitors. Everybody's got to look at what the other guy is doing. What type of product can either be a homo or a heterogeneous product? Homo, single, hetero, many. Okay, entry varies. Okay, yes, you could collude. Okay, downward sloping demand curve, maybe a bit of a kinkiness. We'll talk about that. And the long run economic profits, yes, those can be positive. Okay, we continue onwards. Factors that determine the market structure. We're going to look at 5 specific factors, okay, and how we relate them, of course, to the four markets that we've just looked at. And these 5 factors are what will determine the market structure. Number 1, the number and size of firms supplying the product. Number 2, the degree of products differentiation. How different is your product from other products? The power of the selling over pricing decision of the seller, over pricing decisions. The relative strength of barriers to the market, getting in and getting out, and the degree of non-price competition. And we'll talk about these as we go. Okay. From the perspective of the owners of the firm, the most desirable, if you're owner of a firm, okay, is the one that you have got control over prices. Once you've got control over prices, that can lead to large profits. Okay, and which of these structures leads to the greatest amount of control over price? Okay, monopoly and oligopoly. Okay, generally monopolistic competition offers less control over price. Okay, over our page over here, top of page 3, firms operating under perfectly competitive market conditions have got zero control over price. Remember again, guys, and that's why you would find that their curve, okay, is a horizontal curve. Okay, we move down over here into the next learning outcome statements. Okay, explain the relationships between price, marginal revenue, marginal cost, economic profit, elasticity of demand under each of the market structures. And hopefully everybody's quite familiar with these terms. Marginal revenue, marginal cost, all good things like that, as we then come out of learning module 1. And let's have a look at the pricing structure under each of the following market structures. Okay, and we start off, because remember we're going to go through each and every one of the market structures. Let's start off with perfect competition. And what do we see when we've got a situation of perfect competition? A large number of buyers and sellers. The products offered are fairly or virtually identical. Okay, there's not many barriers to exit and to entry. Okay, the sellers of the product have got no market pricing power. They cannot control the prices at all, and non-price competition is absent. Okay, let's have a look at the demand analysis and pricing if it's a perfectly competitive market. Let's have a look over here. There's price on your left hand side. On the bottom axis we've got quantity, and what do you notice? There is a stock standard market demand curve. Okay, this talks about the price of a homogeneous product that's sold in a competitive market, and there we go. It's quite strongly determined then by the demand and supply in the market. And what do you notice, of course, as price moves up, quantity moves down. Again, hopefully everybody can see the inverse relationship then between price and quantity. Okay, for normal goods and services, what happens? As the price goes down, quantity increases. Let's show you that on. So as that goes, as prices move down, yes, quantity goes the other way, hence the inverse relationship. Okay, and what is that based on? We've spoken about this earlier. Okay, that's based upon the income effects. Okay, remember the income effect is that, yeah, albeit that the consumer doesn't get any more money, any more income, any more salary, but as prices fall, their purchasing power goes up because they can purchase more of the same good. Why? Because prices are lower. And we've got the substitution effects, that if your price goes up too much, what will we do? We'll substitute you and we'll go for a similar product that is lower priced. Okay, let's have a look at a stock standard old QD. What's QD, guys? And remember, we're not going to get impressed by these fancy economic notations. Let's just understand them. Q, quantity, D, demanded. And this is remember, guys, this is, if they do give you anything similar to this in an exam, they are going to have to give you the equation itself. So you don't need to learn any. This equation is something that they have made up and put here for us in the notes. Okay, and let's have a look over here. Let's talk about the demand function over here. And remember, we've seen all this these maths tricks that we did in learning module 1. You can just rearrange the terms over here, can't we? And we can put price over there on the left hand side. I can move it across. My 100, as you notice over there, becomes 5y because I divided by 5 for price to get rid of price. And my quantity becomes 0.2. Why? Because I went quantity over here is equal to 1. Don't forget, I'm going to put it over the 5 to get rid of, to isolate the p on its own. 1 over 5, of course, gives me 0.2q. Okay. In this form, what's total revenue? This is nice and easy to see as well. Total revenue is equal to whatever the price is times whatever quantity I can sell. That's the revenue that I can earn as a firm. Average revenue is taking total revenue divided by quantity demanded, or whatever I managed to sell. And based on that, okay, we can go average revenue is what? Total revenue divided by quantity. And we give you all of the equations over there. Okay, and that's everything we've seen already before. Okay, marginal, what's marginal? Marginal is the additional revenue every time I sell one additional unit. Okay, and that's obviously would be denoted then by change in quantity demanded. For example, if quantity demanded, okay, was 100, and now I sell one more unit to 101, marginal revenue. And just look how we denote that. We're going to say change in quantity demanded from 100 to 101 is equal to 1 unit. That's why we call that change. Okay. If I then wanted to say, okay, let's put into my equation total quantity demanded plus marginal revenue, additional quantity, okay, for one more unit sold. Okay, we can then define marginal revenue as what? The change in total revenue, in other words, how much it changed by, okay, for additional units, divided by the change in quantity demanded. Okay, and again, we're just moving around equations over here, and marginal or additional revenue is then going to be equal to 20. We've got that from our first equation, minus quantity demanded, okay, because we just putting that into my equation, minus 0.2 times the change in quantity demanded. Okay, we've moved our equations around to take a look at those. It just all stems from our understanding then, guys, of things like total revenue, marginal revenue, and all things like that. We move the equations around as such. Okay, we then talk about elasticity of, sorry, just by the way, we come out then with a marginal revenue equation. Elasticity of demand under perfect competition. Okay, let's talk about price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity measures the percentage change in quantity, okay, given a percentage change in price. So let's say, for example, I raise my prices by 5%. What is that going to do to my quantity? Is that also going to change by 5%? Is it going to move by more than 5%? That's what we call price elasticity of demand. The relationship is negative, isn't it? Okay, why? Because the higher my prices, as prices, just look at the relationship here, guys. There's prices, as prices go up, quantity demanded goes down. And on the other side as well, guys, as prices move down, we can see the inverse relationship. Okay, prices are going down, quantity demanded goes up. There is an inverse relationship between the two. Okay. Important to note, a lot of economists, okay, say that price elasticity, okay, is an absolute value. Okay. In other words, it's got a positive side. Remember, an absolute value doesn't matter if what your answer comes out to. When you talk about absolute value, we'll see this later on in the quant section, often expressed as something like that. We put two horizontal vertical brackets around a number, that means that it doesn't matter what that number initially was, a minus or a plus, we're going to read it as a plus. Okay. Higher price elasticity will tell us that consumers are very responsive to changes in prices. In other words, it's a very elastic price. You change your prices, your quantity will change significantly. Okay. And again, on the reverse side, lower values for price elasticity will tell us that consumers are not very responsive to price changes. Okay, here's the relationship for elasticity or price elasticity. Okay, what did my quantity change? Change in quantity demanded divided by change in price. In other words, as your price changed, what did that do to the change in quantity? How much did that affect it? Okay, notice, of course, guys, please don't forget, we've got a minus over there just to get rid of, to make it as a absolute value. Okay, because typically what would you find in such an equation? You would find percentage change in quantity. Well, my quantity went down by 10%. Why did it go down by 10%? Because my prices went up, okay, by 10%. Well, that would give you an answer of what, guys? Minus 1. An elasticity of minus 1. What do we always do? We put a minus sign in front of that minus 1 and becomes a plus 1. That's we talk about the absolute value. Okay, don't forget the sign. Okay, when demand is very responsive, elasticity is greater than 1. When it's not so responsive, it's called inelastic, and the elasticity will be less than 1. If it's exactly equal to 1, we call that unitary elastic. Okay. Price elasticity of demand will depend on, it'll be higher if there are many close substitutes. Why will it be higher? Because you'll just go somewhere else if they raise your prices and buy another product that's similar to yours, and the length of time in which the demand schedule is being considered. Okay, we've got two extreme cases of price elasticity of demand. We've seen these before. The horizontal demand schedule, which is called perfectly price elastic, and horizontal means that at any given price, okay, that the response in quantity is infinite. Okay, and that would obviously be the demand curve for a perfectly competitive firm. Why? A perfectly competitive firm, as we mentioned before, is what we call a price taker. Okay, in other words, what happens if you move your prices around in a perfectly competitive market? Okay, the quantity supplied by each firm is negligible. So there's so many suppliers, there are so many sellers in this perfectly competitive market. If you change your price, you're going to be in a bit of trouble, and that's why it's perfectly price elastic, and it's a horizontal curve. The vertical curve is exactly the other way around. It is perfectly, okay, price inelastic. It's vertical. Okay, you can do whatever you like to the price. Okay, and the demand will be exactly the same. Quantity supplied, quantities demanded will be exactly the same. Something like insulin. Okay, a diabetic consumer cannot do without his insulin. So if you raise the prices by $10, what does he have to do? He's got to find another $10 because he has to have that particular product. And therefore your demand curve becomes a vertical curve. Some other factors that affect demand in situations of perfect competition. Two other important forces we've got to consider. Income elasticity of demand, okay, and that is as people's income changes. Look at the words income elasticity. As people's income changes, what does that do then to the demand? Okay, for normal goods, okay, as people's income increases, they buy more. Okay, look at the calculation. There we go. Okay. Percentage change in quantity demanded, again, over the change in the price. Okay, sorry, change in Y, my apologies. That is change in income. Just to take you back just a little bit for 1 second. What is my equation over here? This price elasticity, it's change in quantity over change in price. Income elasticity, what are we measuring over here? I'm measuring how does my quantity change in response to what? Changes in income. Okay, for normal goods, Okay, elasticity of what we call income elasticity is generally a positive number. In other words, as income goes up, demand for goods goes up. You can see it's not an inverse relationship as it was for price. Income elasticity is generally a positive number. Okay, we're going to move along a bit over here just to show you. Okay, the difference between price elasticity and income is price represents a movement along the demand curve. Okay, because we're going to say, well, as prices go up, demand goes down and vice versa. Okay, income elasticity is a shift of the demand curve. Okay, because remember what's happening now, with more income you can buy more of that good, but where? At any price. Everyone comfortable? Next one to consider is what we call cross price elasticity. And look at the words again. Cross price, okay, it's a change in price of a related product like a strong substitute or a complementary product. So now if prices for your particular product go up too much, well, there is some kind of a substitute for you. And again, let's look at our equation. The change in quantity demanded for the particular product divided by, look at what we're changing now. Now you can see what I've added in. Percentage change in quantity demanded for product A divided by the change in product B. Okay, so for example, if a close competitor, in this example product B, okay, lowers their price, what's going to happen? Okay, consumers are going to say, hold on a second, Mr. A, yes, we love your beverage, but your pricing's too high. Mr. B and his beverage B have lowered their prices, we're going to go over there. So what we're measuring over here is the relationship then between how would your quantities change when your competitors who have a similar product to you, a substitute product or a complementary product, what would that then do to your quantity demanded? That's called cross elasticity. Okay, cross elasticity of demand, okay, between two products is positive. Okay, things like Coke and Pepsi, so those are substitutes. Okay, and if it's negative, if you come out with an answer over here, when I calculate my cross elasticity of demand, and my answer comes out negative, the two products are probably complements of one another. Okay, same brand of things like shampoo and perhaps conditioner. Okay, there we go. I'm not going to spend too much more time over there. Okay, let's have a look on top of page 7. Okay, the relationship between TR, revenue, and price elasticity is as follows. Let's have a look. And now remember, guys, we have got 3 different types of elasticity. When my elasticity is greater than 1, it's highly elastic. And then what would we say? Prices go up, revenue goes down. Why? Why does revenue go down? Because remember, what's the link over there? In my total revenue calculation, what's in there? Strongly driven by quantities. But what happens over here, guys, when demand is elastic, as prices go up, quantity goes down, and hence revenue goes down as well, and vice versa when prices fall. When demand is unitary elastic, no changes at all. And when demand is completely inelastic, as I raise prices over here, look what happens. I raise my prices, but demand is inelastic. So what's going to happen? Quantities remain the same. If quantities remain the same, what happens to total revenue? Remember, what are the elements and the variables that are included in total revenue? What do we see? Okay, total revenue is equal to quantity times price. Now, when it's completely inelastic, price goes up and quantities, remember our example with diabetes and insulin, quantity remains exactly the same. Therefore, total revenue will rise as well. Everybody comfortable with that? Okay. And we say over here, total revenue is maximized when marginal revenue then is 0. Okay. as long as marginal revenue is positive, in other words, every time I sell an additional unit, that'll add value, okay, to my total revenue. Yes, total revenue will continue to increase. But as soon as marginal revenue, okay, is negative, in other words, every time I sell an additional unit, prices are going to go down. Obviously, that will have a negative impact, okay, on total revenue. Therefore, the percentage decrease in price will be greater than the percentage increase in quantity demanded. How do we show our relationship between marginal revenue and price elasticity? Marginal revenue is equal to price, okay, 1 minus 1 divided by price elasticity. Remember again, look what we're using. We are using EP. That's price elasticity. Everybody comfortable with it? Okay. Unfortunately, guys, the equations, we got to know those. All right. Okay. Consumer surplus, value less expenditure. Simple as that. Market competition. Consumer surplus is the difference between the value that a consumer places on what he's buying and the amount of money that is required he has to pay for them. Okay. In other words, the consumer says, well, how much value then am I getting, okay, as a result of purchasing this particular product? Okay. In order to purchase a unit, consumers have to give up something, okay? And what's that something that they generally have to give up? Okay. They pay for additional units, okay? They say, well, how much value are they getting? Because remember, if they're using their money to buy your product, okay, well, then they can't use it to buy something else. There's some kind of a sacrifice that they, okay. If demand curves are negatively sloped, what does that mean? Okay, it means that each additional unit that, okay, as the value of each additional unit falls, remember what we said. Okay, let's just draw you a quick picture, just a quick reminder over here. What does that curve look like? Well, there it is. And remember, we always got, let's just put them on for you. There's price and quantity. What did we say? Okay, if it's a negatively sloped curve, what happens? Okay, as price falls, quantities go up. Okay, and therefore we recognize that the demand curve is can also be considered a marginal value curve. Okay, which shows us the highest price that consumers will be willing to pay for each unit as they move it up and down the curve. Okay, and this measure will translate then into the area under the consumer's demand curve, okay, up until where? The very last unit consumed. The marginal value of that unit is what we call P1. We'll show you that now. Okay, that's the highest price the consumer is willing to pay for that particular unit. Okay, everybody comfortable? Okay, and look over here on top of page 8. Okay, as we move up and down, okay, same story. There's the price. There is the quantity. Okay, and remember what we said, the demand curve is also called the marginal value curve. Okay, and the consumer surplus is the area beneath the demand curve, okay, above what we call the price that he actually paid. Okay, so if over there P1 is what he paid, he'll get quantity 1, and then this additional amount over there is what we're going to be considered, what we call the consumer surplus. Okay. The total value of Q1, okay, we've shown you that. Total expenditure is the area, okay, in our particular rectangle, goes up to P1, and it's Q1 over there, and the total consumer surplus we've spoken about already. Okay, and that is, if I just take you back after all of that, just to show you where that all came from, guys. Okay, and this was all under, oops, I'm going to go a little bit further back. This is all talking about market structure 1, perfect competition. Everybody comfortable. We move forward now a few pages after all of that. Okay, and now we're going to talk about monopolistic competition. Okay, monopolistic competition. Okay, and there was a point in time that economists realized that most markets don't operate under the conditions of perfect competition. Okay, yeah, there's things like there are strong competitive forces, but there are other non-competitive factors that play a role as well. What are some of the characteristics then of monopolistic competition? Okay, a large number of potential buyers and sellers. The products offered by each seller are close substitutes for the products offered by other firms. Okay, every firm is trying the best that they can to make their product look a little bit different. Entry into and exit from the market. You can come in and you can go out fairly easily, low costs. Firms have got some pricing power, and suppliers differentiate their products. They use advertising and other non-pricing strategies. Okay, often this is called a bit of a hybrid market. Okay, and one of the key distinctive factors of a monopolistic competition, okay, is that called product differentiation. Everyone's trying to tell you, well, their product is different because of this, and their product is different because of that. That's called product differentiation of our page. Okay, and an example of demand for monopolistic competition, okay, the communication device manufacturers, okay, and providers, they will differentiate their products with different colors, styles, networks. You can get a green cell phone, a blue cell phone, an iPhone, bundled applications, whatever you like. But you can see they all try to bring consumers in with what is essentially, you know, there's always a little bit of a war between the various cell phone providers, why their phone is better than others. But truth be told, most of the cell phones can do what each others can do. Okay, so what are they? How do they try and differentiate? You can get different colors, you can get different styles, different models. You can get a 2-for-1 offer. That's how that one works. Okay. Demand analysis and pricing when we come to a monopolistic competitive market. Okay, the demand curve is sloping downwards to the right, and as we say, normally price and quantity demanded are negatively related. Everybody comfortable with that one? We've seen this picture time and time again as part of learning module 1. Okay, and there of course you can see price is on my left hand side, quantity there down on the bottom axis, and as you can see there's an inverse relationship between quantity and price. In other words, what do we see? As price goes down, okay, quantity increases, and vice versa. Okay, you also see all your curves over here. Okay, short run marginal cost, average total cost, we could have even called it ATC. Okay, at that point your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue. You can see over there the curve then kicks up at that point in time. Okay, that's your marginal revenue. Okay, we've got all of our different numbers over there. Now, just something important to notice about a monopolistic competition. In the short run, the profit maximizing choice is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's the point. That's the quantity. Okay. And how do we achieve that if the products are so similar? Well, what do you have to do? Okay. Because the product is somewhat different from your competitors, so remember what we spoke about, a little bit of products differentiation. You can charge a bit of a higher price as determined by the demand curve. And in our particular example, Q1 then, because remember Q1 is the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, it's over there. So quantity number 1, Q1, that's the quantity level, okay, and at Q1 on the curve, okay, that will then be price 1, okay. Total revenue, nice and simple. Total revenue, okay, is P1, okay, the price that they can charge at that particular point times the quantity that they can sell at that particular price point. Okay, we move down to oligopoly. Okay, oligopoly, small number of firms that dominate the market. Okay, very few firms though. Okay, what are some of the characteristics of an oligopoly? Small number of potential sellers. Okay, the products offered are close substitutes for products offered by other firms. Okay, entry into the market is quite difficult. There's significant barriers to entry. Okay, the firms generally have got substantial pricing power, and they're often highly differentiated by the marketing features and other things like that. And because there are so few firms, okay, the firms have got quite a high degree of pricing power. What you often find is a fair amount of price collusion. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much more time over there. Let's have a look at the demand analysis and pricing strategies for an oligopoly. Okay, three basic pricing strategies: pricing interdependence, Cournot assumption, and we've got the Nash equilibrium. Let's go through them. The oligopolist's demand relationship represents the potential increase in the market share when competitors' price increases, okay, are not matched. Okay, there's no significant change in market share. Okay, let's have a look at some of these. Given a set price or the prevailing price, the price elasticity of demand will be much greater if the price is increased and less so if the price is decreased. Okay, the firm's customers in most cases are more responsive to increases in prices. Okay, why? Because you've got certain of your rivals that have got lower prices. Okay, could also be, okay, the firm's customers are less responsive to price decreases. Why? Because if the prices go down, what's going to happen? The rivals will just match the price. Okay, so, and based on that, we're going to say, because you've got those two possible options, an oligopoly has got two different demands structured. One of them is associated with price increases, okay, and the other one looks at price reductions. Okay, and let's have a look at the first one. Kinked demand curve in an oligopoly market number one. Okay, and what do you see over here? Again, same story, price quantity, and we have a look over here. The functions DP1, okay, and MRP1, okay, are the demand and the marginal revenue, okay, associated with higher prices. Normal DP, let's change our color, DP and MRP, DP, okay, sorry, I've mislabeled those. Let's just label them all correctly again, my apologies. So you've got DP number one as DP, sorry, DP not one, DP rises, the marginal revenue, okay, as prices rises, and then I've got DP1, demand price when it goes down, and MRP1, which is over there. Okay, and the ones I've put now in blue represent lower price demand and marginal revenue schedules. Okay, the two demand schedules, okay, will always intersect at the prevailing price. Okay, and what do we call the prevailing price? That's the price where price increases and decreases are both equal to 0. Look at this fancy one. Kinked demand curve in our second market, oligopoly market number 2. Okay, and you can see a little bit of a kink. Where's the kink? The kink just means it kinks down. It's not a, first of all, it's not completely linear, and it's also not, okay, something looking like that either. It's got a kink in it like that. Okay, let's go over our page. Okay, and the pricing strategy results in what we call a kinked demand curve. We've got two segments representing different reactions to price changes. Okay, and the slight challenge that we've got when we do have a kink in the demand curve, we've got what we call a discontinuous marginal revenue structure. One part is associated with a price increase side, and the other side, as we mentioned earlier, is associated with a price decrease side. Okay. and based on that, the firm's overall demand is the relevant portion of DP as it goes up, and DP prices as they then go down. So we've got to consider both sides. Okay, and diagram number 2, which we've just shown you on the previous page, okay, looks at the firm's new demand and marginal revenue schedules. Okay, looking at what happens when prices go both up and both go down. If the firm's got low marginal costs, okay, MC1, which is the profit maximizing pricing rule, which we just spoke about a bit earlier, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, that's the best place to be. Yes, that'll still hold true then for an oligopoly. Okay, if the marginal cost curve goes through the gap in marginal revenue, what's the best place to be? The most profitable price remain unchanged, okay, at the prevailing price and original level of output. Okay, we're going to go move to the next two cases, Cournot and then the Nash equilibrium. In this particular strategy, each firm will determine its profit maximizing production level by assuming that other firms' output will not change. And it's a nice assumption if you can make that, okay, because it simplifies your pricing strategy, because you don't have to guess what other firms will do to retaliate as you move your prices around. Well, they're not going to do anything. Okay. The most basic oligopoly market situation is called a two-firm duo. Duo means two, a market where we talk about in a state of equilibrium. Neither firm's got any incentive to change their output, okay, given the other firm's production levels. Everybody's going to stay exactly the same. Okay, each firm just wants to maximize their own profits under the assumption that the other firm will continue to do the same thing. That's our assumption over here. That's why it's called the Cournot assumption, okay, because you're assuming that the other person, and again, we're making an assumption that there's two parties involved over here, won't do anything, okay, and we assume that the pattern will continue until each firm reaches its long-term equilibrium position. Okay, let's have a look over here. A duopoly market, aggregate demand, let's assume we can estimate the demand as follows. Quantity demanded equals 350 less price. Supply function, let's just assume, is represented by a marginal cost of 20. Okay, what's your pricing strategy? And your quantity demand equals quantity 1 plus quantity 2. Quantity 1 is, remember, it's a duopoly. Duopoly means the quantity for firm 1 plus the quantity for firm 2. Where am I going to maximize my profits? At MR, where marginal revenue equals marginal costs. If we rearrange that equation somewhat, we get price is equal to 350 less quantity demanded is equal to 350 less both quantities, because remember we talk about the quantity of the overall firm. Again, we've got marginal cost is equal to 20. Total revenue, I can just multiply price and quantity. I'm not going to do all that math together with you, okay? And you need to solve both of your equations, quantity 1 and quantity 2, okay? Look at all of the maths over here under Cournot's assumption, okay? And we come out with our pricing. In the Cournot strategic pricing solution, our market equilibrium, after doing all of the maths, I'm not going to do it with you, it's just fairly gentle, will be 130, and we get output over there, quantity being 220, and we sell for price being 130. Everybody comfortable with that? Okay. In competition, the equilibrium, we said before, is where price is equal to marginal cost. Okay. And we look at to show you a picture over here. So here is the firm's, competitor firms, then equilibrium price. Okay, you can see that differs a little bit, doesn't it? Okay. And we look at the diagram which shows oligopoly, competitive, and monopoly market equilibrium positions. Okay, and just remember, why do we call it P Cournot? Because that's the price under the Cournot assumption. Okay, the monopolies firm schedule, where remember monopoly, what's our pricing is where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Solve for that and we get to quantity of 165, okay, and we can just plug that into my equation and we can get then the pricing of that. And all of this, after all of this, guys, don't spend too much time on the maths, just get an understanding of what we're trying to do. End of the day, just very briefly, when we have our demand equations, we are always solving for quantity and for price. And all we're trying to show you over here is where does Cournot fall in terms of our pricing. If you look over here, it fits in exactly in the middle between perfect competition and monopolistic. Okay, there is your pricing. There's your 130 pricing, which we sold for previously, and there is your 220 in terms of its quantity. Okay, if we continue on, that was Cournot in a duopoly market. But remember, again, just important to note, guys, that we did use some fairly strenuous assumptions. Okay, we assumed that nothing changes in the market. We assumed only two players in the market, so we could solve for all of our various equations. Just keep those in mind as you move forward. Nash equilibrium. Okay, we've got a theory called game theory. Okay, game theory is it's a methodology or a set of tools that decision makers use to say, well, if we do something, what will the other person then do? Okay, came along Nash equilibrium. Okay, and this is present when two or more participants in a non-cooperative game, okay, have got no incentive to move away from their current strategies, okay, after they've thought about and considered what the opponent is likely to do. That obviously refers then back to game theory. Okay, how would we then relate Nash to an oligopoly? Okay, in terms of an oligopoly market, Nash equilibrium is the equilibrium defined by what? That none of them can increase their profits by changing their pricing strategy. They consider what the other one does, and everybody stays exactly the same. Okay, the assumption is made that each firm does the best it can given its reactions by its rivals. Okay, each firm anticipates that the other firms will react to any change made by the competitors, okay, by doing the best they can under what we call the changed circumstances. Let's have a look over here, and again, let's consider, okay, Nash equilibrium in a duopoly market. Okay, what are we assuming over here? Two firms in the market, Arrows and Bats. Arrows and Bats can charge high prices or low prices, okay, for their product. Let's have a look over here. Okay, Arrows low price 50, Bats low price 70. Okay, let's just talk about the left-hand column first. Okay, both Arrows and Bats offer their products at low prices, 50 and 70. Top right, Arrows go low, Bats go high. Okay, if Arrows offers their product at a low price, Bats, who charges a high price, will get a zero profit. Lower right, they both charge high prices, and they both make massive profits, don't they? Okay. And then we've got, so we'll come to the next one in a second. Okay. And what we notice in an oligopoly market is that Nash equilibrium says that each firm does not care about the other firm, and they will do what's in their best interest to make the most amount of profits. So, looking again over here, Bats can improve by offering the product at low prices. How can they make the most when Arrows is also charging, when Arrows charges high prices? Okay, in the lower left solution, Bats makes 350, Arrows can make 500. It can only do so if Bats also charges a high price. So you've got to just try and see where is the best option. Truth be told, is no one cares what the other person is doing or how much profit they are making, as long as you can make the best profits. The option is clearly not in Bats' best interest because it can increase its return from 300 to 350 by charging lower prices. So they can move their prices up to 350 if they then go and charge low prices. Okay, so the best thing to do, it sounds a little bit anti-competitive, but the best thing to do is to collude with one another. Bats agrees to share 51% of its 500, okay, when both of them are charging very high prices. Bats should be willing to charge high prices, okay? Because if they both charge, where they make their most profits altogether, okay, is where they both charge high prices. If we go for where both charge high prices, that's the bottom right over here. Arrows makes 500, Bats makes 300. In total, they make 800. That's a lot of profit. But if you go to the bottom left over here, now what happens? Arrows makes 300 and Bats makes 350. Now we've got a problem, don't we? Because what's going to happen? Okay, total profits made are 650, but what's going to happen? Here, Bats makes more, 350, and here, Arrows makes more. So, but overall, this particular scenario, okay, which is this one over here, let's change its color. That's where the most amount of profits are made. Is 800 being made over there. So now you ask yourself the question, shouldn't we all be in this area? So if we're in this area, Bats will say to you, no, I'm not interested. I'm not going to charge a high price, says Bats, when I can charge a low price there and make more profits. So Arrow says, you know what we'll do? Let's both charge high prices. Okay, we'll maximize profits at 800 and I'll give you half my profits or something like that. You'll make more than you would at the 350 level, but I'm also going to make more than as well. Okay, that's called the Nash equilibrium. Yes, of course, everybody's probably shouting, but isn't that illegal? Yes, in most countries it is collusion. But you see how Nash would work in terms of equilibrium, because we just say, well, we don't care what anyone else is doing. We're just going to make the most amount of profit ourselves. Okay. 6 factors affect the chances of successful collusion. The number and size of the distribution of sellers, similarity of products, the various cost structures, the order size and the frequency, the strength and severity of a retaliation, and the degree of external competition. Another massive decision-making strategy, okay, is first mover advantage in the Stackelberg model. What is that? Okay, the leader firm in this model chooses its output first. The follower firm chooses after seeing what the leader's output is. Okay, the leader in the Stackelberg model has got a distinct advantage, being a first mover. Okay, what could he do? He could overproduce aggressively. What would that force the follower to do? To scale back their productions. Okay, or even punish or eliminate the weaker opponent. Okay, often called Stackelberg's, often called the top dog strategy. Okay, we move to our next market structure, which is monopoly. We've seen this before. Opposite side, what's monopoly? Single seller of a highly differentiated product. The product offered has no close substitute. Entry into the market is difficult. High costs and significant barriers to competition. The firm has considerable pricing power, no threat of competition, and is differentiated through non-price strategies such as advertising. Monopoly models are unusual. Okay, you've got only have one seller. Okay, at all. Okay, often you find it as a result of things like government-controlled authorization, things like that. What's your demand analysis within a monopoly market? Okay, nice and simple. Okay, it's really just the aggregate demand for the product in the market. Okay, demand is negatively related to price as usual if there is an income and substitution impact at play. Okay, the slope of the demand curve is negative, downward sloping. If you see this once, you've seen this many times. Quantity demanded is A minus BP. P obviously, guys, we know. Q we know is quantity demanded. B is obviously price. Okay, we can work out total revenue. What's total revenue, guys? Price that we charge for our products times the quantity that we sell, and we can just manipulate those equations. I'm not going to spend too much time there. Again, we've seen this all before, guys. I'm going to move through it relatively quickly. Marginal revenue is the change in total times the change in quantity. Remember, marginal is the increase of an additional unit. Okay. Because an increase in quantity requires a lower price, your marginal revenue schedule is steeper than the demand schedule. If the demand schedule is completely linear, the marginal revenue curve will be twice as steep then as the demand curve in this particular example. You can see all my numbers over there. Okay, and there's a bit of a picture for you then on page 17. Let us have a look at an example. Suppose a company is operating on a remote island and they're the single supplier of electricity. A nice position to be. Demand for the product is, and just here's your particular curve, guys, 200 minus 0.5 P. P the price, Q the quantity. As per usual, guys, we isolate price, okay, and 200 becomes 400 because I divide by 0.5, and Q becomes 2 again because I go 1 divided by 0.5. Total revenue is over there. Marginal revenue is over there. Okay. If we use the diagram above, okay, the demand curve's intercept will be 400, slope minus 2, marginal intercept of 400. You can see there 2 times the size, a slope of minus 4. At this point in time, probably a very good time to take a bit of a break, okay, and we will continue onwards with this learning module number 2 in video number 2.